YouTube or all of them or Facebook?
Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to the YouTubes right now to see if we're there. Yep, looks like we're live. And
Sweet.
Kraig, if you want to keep an eye on Facebook, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Yep. Yeah, it shows me, but not. It shows me, but it's the Skype only. I don't know why. Like, I see myself in the chat here, but not.
Yeah, I see you as Skype as well, but when I'm looking over on my Skype, I don't see your video. I just see audio coming through for you. But when I did see your video, it was super fuzzy, so you may just be audio only tonight, and I'll have to figure out how we can get that pretty mug of yours back on.
Compliment.
All right, well, it looks like we're good to go, so we're just going to hit the ground running. Welcome everybody that may or may not be watching on the internet. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or, Facebook or YouTube down the road. This is the Roto Heat IDP only stream, so if you are looking for offensive help, this ain't the place for you. We ain't helping you. I got some special guests. I got Kraig, who's been jumping on with me lately, and Paul, who joined me last week. Kraig, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing well. Got to get outside for a little bit. Went to the store for a bit. Just doing what I can outside of work to keep the kids busy. How are you doing?
I am living the dream. Just trying to keep busy and keep everything moving forward. Paul, how are you doing, bud?
Other than the fact that no one can see me, pretty good. I mean, it's a Monday, and that's always, fun, but, made some money off some of the individuals that are watching on YouTube right now, so, come on.
There you go.
I'm sure our YouTube guests are super excited about that.
They might be watching, and they might be saying stuff behind my back, but it's okay.
As long as you're here watching, that's all that matters.
Nice. All right, so tonight we start a series on kind of our top 10. This week we're going to talk about our top 10 linebackers. And it's an interesting group. I think we'll have some interesting takes on them. We're going to hit the ground running. So I'll ask Kraig, who is your top linebacker, and sell me on him.
My top linebacker on my board is the guy that we have on the promotion tonight that got put together by Rick. It's Darius Leonard, linebacker for the Colts. I do not actually own him anywhere. I liked him, but I didn't like him as much as some other people did in some of my leagues, including Paul. So I wasn't able to get him at a price that I was comfortable with at the time. Clearly, that was a bit of a mistake. It's certainly nice to have now. But, he's a guy that I think was on a lot of people's boards, but not necessarily to what he became. You're looking at the guy that is the center of the defense for that Colts team. In his first year, he had 121 combined tackles. He bumped that up to 163 the next year. But more impressive than that, he jumped up a good 40 solos. Sacks went up. Forced fumbles. I mean, the guy was just all over the field and a clear heart of that defense for the Colts. And I don't see a whole lot of competition for him. I do see that they keep the defensive line, to keep them clean, to keep the rotation going through there. And he's just the guy on defensive linebacker that I want if I had my pick of them. Price not counting.
Yep.
Paul, how do you feel about it?
I'd feel a lot better if I didn't take him off of my own team. And I can have a good laugh at this. We trade where I had the 20th round selection or something, and I selected him. We figured out after the fact that it wasn't mine, and I had to give him to someone else for free, basically. And I'm sitting there like, can I give you these other players instead? And yada yada yada. Nope. Whoops. But no, I feel the same way Kraig does. Yeah, they're improved. linebacker, if for nothing else, they don't get anything else, and they're one of the few teams for fielder, which just means the whole center of the field is just open for him. So he's going to soak up tackles whenever he plays. And that's what you're looking for. I mean, you don't want tackles only, but he soaks up a lot of them.
Yeah, tough other plays too. You know, like he went 5 and then 7 sacks. He got more than a couple interceptions his first year. He had 2 his second year, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, pass deflections, and then, like I said, he's just all over the field for him. And he's one of those guys that even if you're in more of a big play league, is going to get you a linebacker besides just an edge rusher.
Yeah. I guess I'm getting some word that we're getting echo on the sound.
Yeah, I'm working with Rick on fixing it while you guys are talking. That's why I'm not saying a word. I'm just letting you guys chat about it.
Yeah,
Do you have him? What position did you have him at, Paul, on your top 10?
Number one. Number one, and it wasn't really a discussion. I mean, I could have put number 2 over him, but no. Brad,
Where do you have him, Brad?
Is that Leonard?
Yeah.
He's still up in my top. What was he like? My top number 2 player, I think. Oh no, he's actually my favorite linebacker, and he's my number 2 overall player.
Okay. So
behind Hunter.
I don't know. Let's see here. Let me unfilter. I was only filtering for linebackers, so let me take it off. Actually, I have Jamal Adams is my favorite player.
Oh yeah. I guess I just heard that the echo just got better from someone watching. So
yeah.
Not to interrupt.
No, you're good. We are. I'm hearing that we're fixing things. All right. So
Who do you have as your number 2, Paul?
What's that?
Who do you have as your number 2? Since we all got a consensus number 1.
Somebody that you traded me that I probably overpaid for. I almost said Terrell Edmonds. Tremaine Edmonds.
And why is that? Sell me on Edmonds.
Age, upside, known, role in the scheme, and the fact that he plays inside. I honestly feel that he can be good until age 30 or so. So he's just someone who I want. Trying to think here. Yeah, he gets lots of sacks. I know. They trust him in coverage. I know one of the things I scouted when I saw him was that he wasn't necessarily smart, but he was a rookie at age 20. So, okay, I can get behind that. Yeah, I just have him number 2, and I can see him going number 1, but no. Leonard's ahead of him. What's your thoughts, Kraig?
I had Edmonds at number 3 when I had gone over these, so I'm pretty much right there with you. You know, Buffalo went out and got some linebacker help, you know, sort of more so than they had. I think they re-signed or they kept Milano. I don't remember if he was a free agent, but I think it might have been last year. But they still have him. And then they went out and got A.J. Klein, who is a nice player, but he's not going to be your top linebacker taking over everything. So I don't really have that big of a concern there. Same sort of thing we talked about with Leonard, where he's got a good defensive line in front of him to help keep him clean to make those plays. Yeah, I can certainly see him being your number 2. I like him a lot too.
Yeah, he's definitely inside my top 10. I mean, I'm a big fan of him, and especially as young as he is.
Well, where do you have them? Obviously, you're saying top 10. That means you don't have them second, third, or fourth.
I actually have them at 6, but really, we're splitting hairs in these top 10 because they're all really good players.
Yeah.
I'll get behind that.
Okay. All right. So I think I finally have everything figured out audio-wise. Rick tells me that we sound beautiful. So I'm going to recap just for those that are jumping on or those that may watch after and see gargling and gibberish and whatnot for the last 5 to 6 minutes. So we're talking tonight about linebackers. Obviously, everyone's consensus number 1 overall was Darius Leonard because he's a stud. The dude's fantastic, and he's super young, and he's going to be good for a long time. Indy's defense is only getting better. Number 2, we were asking Paul number 2, and he brought up Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills, which we both like. Did you say where you had him at, Kraig, in your rankings?
Yeah, I had him at 3.
Oh, so you're right there. I have him at 6, but all these guys are going to be really good. So if you have any of these shares or can get them, you probably should because we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
Yeah, we do. So number 2 for Paul was Edmonds. Who's your number 2, Kraig?
And this was before it all went down as far as the free agency, but I had, and this will be a bit of a shock, I think, for Paul, but I had Corey Littleton up there as my number 2. I feel the situation's sort of the same. I mean, he doesn't have as good of a defense line currently in front of him. It'd be hard to go him from the Rams to the Raiders. But that said, I like the production that he's put up so far. He's also had, durability in that he's played in all 16 games for all 4 seasons that he's been in the league. And then he's shown improvement over those as well, upping as his stats as he got that more playing time, and he showed himself that he can be that heart of the defense on the Rams. I think there's going to be more opportunities for him going to the Raiders. So, we'll have to see how that pans out, but they certainly must believe that too with the money that they gave him and the faith that they're putting in him. And he's also sort of in between Edmonds and Leonard in terms of sort of those big plays. He's got a few more sacks than Edmonds, a few fewer than Leonard. Same thing with tackles for a loss, fumble forced, all that stuff. So, again, like Brad said, it's sort of splitting hairs where you're putting these guys in your top 10. But if we were starting up today, I'd have him there at my number 2 spot.
What do you think?
I would agree with. Yeah, I would agree with all of this. I was just almost a little salty that someone grabbed him and I didn't, and I just didn't see it until he blew up. I have him number 4, but I think the theme on the top, or at least 3 that we have are they're super fast, they're under 25, and we know that they're going to get tackles and at least be asked for other things, aka sacks and an interception once in a while there. Like I said, I have them at number 4. If they draft Kinlaw, which I think everyone looks at it and goes, oh, they need receiver. I know Mayock, the first individual that he looked at was Kinlaw, and that would really help Simmons. And that was at the senior. Oh, sorry about that. I know that he basically walked up and said, what's your number? And when they say that, it's because, hey, we're interested in you, and we want your Skype because we can't actually meet you face-to-face. But, yeah, I would agree with all of that so far.
Yeah, the cool thing about the Raiders and Littleton is that, he's definitely going to get a ton of tackles. I mean, be their best linebacker. I mean, I think of Tahir Whitehead, who has always been a tackle machine. Is faster, more athletic, better tackler. and is going to be able to attack and do a lot of the things that Whitehead couldn't do. I mean, it's definitely a big improvement. And fantasy-wise, I think he's going to push for top 10 consideration this year easily, and probably will wind up being in the top 5 when everything's said and done. But my number 2 guy is somebody that probably most people are not going to think is number 2, but it's probably more so on bias because I've been tooting his horn for a few years now, even though he had a big major knee injury coming out of college, and that's Jalen Smith from the Cowboys. I was a huge fan of his, and it's probably because I live in the Fort Wayne area, and I saw what he did in high school and could see the talent in college and going to the next level. But the guy's continued to produce. I mean, he's got one of the strongest work ethics I've ever seen in a player, and he overcame such adversity to get to where he's at, and he's only gotten better. I mean, most of the leagues that I could get him, I got him pre-injury, and you'd have to pry me off of him. What do you guys think about a guy like Jalen Smith?
When he was coming out of, well, when he got drafted by the Cowboys, which is my team, I certainly had some interest in him. And I'm trying to remember, I don't know of him, but I know I got him in our league. And I had to use an early pick on him because I know other people were looking at him. But, he sat there for a while, and I ended up trading him in a deal that I couldn't pass up, which hurt me a bit. The only reason I didn't have him that high is I certainly see where you're coming from, but I feel he has more competition in terms of another really good linebacker there in Dallas, and Leighton Vander Esch. So I do take that into consideration a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, he certainly has the talent and the ability to, if it was just him for a year there and Leighton was hurt for a full year, he could easily be the linebacker 1 in a given year.
What about you, Paul? What do you think about Smith?
I have him at number 6, but the more that I look at it, it's almost 2 through 6. You can mix this order up however you feel like.
Yeah.
LVE with the neck, I don't know if he will ever get back to his first year, and it's sad, but if that happens, Smith's looking at basically us saying, hey, I'm in the top group, and that's that. He's just super fast. He plays everything well. I don't have the sack numbers on him because I know that he's just super fast. You don't want to necessarily blitz him up the middle, but I know he's not a pushover if he blitzes either. I wasn't interested just because of the injury, but I also wasn't interested in Chubb either on the offensive side for that. And oops. I'm not a doctor, but oops. I certainly saw a top 5 selection before that knee injury, and yeah, he's lived up. I'm just happy because I know he's someone who gives. He's someone that you see. Hey, they donated 5,000, donated new this to charity. I couldn't be happier that someone like him got, what was it, like 5 years and $70 million or something? Excellent. Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah, he got a big deal.
564. Yep.
Was he from Indiana initially? I know he went to Notre Dame, but was he initially from that area?
Yeah, he's a Fort Wayne kid.
Okay. No, that's good for him.
Yeah, Rick's tooting his horn over on YouTube. My buddy is business partners with Jalen Smith, and I played blackjack with him once. He says he's a very nice kid. Met him while he was still at Notre Dame, but my buddy Jamal partnered with him on a glasses company, and now they're sold as Jerry's World. So Rick knows he's a big player, big baller.
Eventually, we'll get him in to where he can say, yeah, I watched him in middle school, and he can be just that much of a gambler, degenerate like the rest of us. I'm just waiting for that out of him.
You may be waiting for a while. All right,
I watched it
so
when he was 4 years old.
I babysat him. Yeah, no, I don't know that we want to go that far. Um, so that was mine. So Paul, who's your number 3?
Well, Craig said he might shock me by his number 3. If I say I'm gonna shock you, you guys probably know who it is already. I'm gonna say Isaiah Simmons. Just I know we don't have a home for him yet, but if he can be, and I know this is a linebacker show, but if he gets linebacker and safety eligible, becomes maybe number 2 overall, just because he's going to get all the stats and play him in whichever spot fits your lineup. Just a supreme athlete. Like I said, we don't have a home, but if he ends up with Washington, just look out because they don't have anything else. I mean, they got Foster, who's always hurt and beating up his girl and just all sorts of fun. And they got Allen in front of them, Payne in front of them, Sweat, and Ionitis, and I don't remember who else they have, but he's decent also. Like, he can be just an absolute machine. If he goes to the Panthers, I can see him just getting a lot. I know it would hurt somebody else who I have on this list, but I don't see him landing in a spot would not be in my top 10 overall.
Yeah, and when we talked about a pre-show about including rookies, it's hard for me without seeing a landing spot to really go, all right, he's definitely, but talent alone, if they consider him a linebacker, he's still probably arguably in the top 10. Especially for me, like I've got a couple of guys who are older and potentially more injury prone on here that I have no problem going, okay, I think he's better than these two long term. What do you say about having a rookie in your top 10, Craig?
I think I need at least a year of seeing it on the field in the NFL before I can put him in there myself. You know, it was the same sort of thing last year where I saw people putting Devin Bush, Devin White, up near or in that area. You know, we might be speaking about a couple of them tonight here yet, and they showed it for a year. At least that fantasy-wise, they can put up those points and they can perform. I believe Paul completely. I have him in my top 20. I don't have him in my top 10 because again, that top 10 guys we've been talking about have shown year after year for at least 2-3 years that they can do it, or a year if we're talking about either of the Devons. But we're gonna have to see. So I don't personally have him there, and I think the only one that might, as far as defenses, crack my top 10 at any position if we get to those at some point in another show. Chase Young, maybe. But again, I'd have to go back and look at it because I haven't really done that combining of putting him in there yet to see where I'd put him.
Yeah. So that being said, who's your number 3?
I had Edmonds at 3, who we had gone over as he was Paul's 2. Yep.
Okay, so then who's your number 4 after that?
One of the ones that we had, I just mentioned, Devin White, Tampa Bay linebacker. I was able to get him in a couple leagues in the second round for IDP, and I was very happy with where I got him there. I did have my choice of the two of them, him or Bush at that point. I still like who I have there. Out of the two of them, well, a lot remains to be seen, but he definitely put up the stats last year. And as far as athleticism, I love what he brings to the table. So I was in his first year. I thought it was just, opportunities that Jameis Winston offense, them throwing ball on the field, scoring, getting the defense back out there in shootouts, to have those opportunities. So we'll see what happens if that changes this year with Brady, because I'm sure the offense is going to change. But as far as what you're looking for in a top 5, top 10 linebacker, he's right up there for me.
For sure. What do you think about him, Paul?
Yeah, I remember watching that Tampa Bay system where they just drop in the middle, and as long as they have David on the other side, I don't think he's that high. I think he's at number 4. I put him at number 8. I can see it. I mean, he's a supreme athlete. If you want it, he has it. But I noticed one thing last year, or his last year and last year, that he was almost too fast. He doesn't know when to not be at full speed. He misses a lot of tackles because of it. And can he learn that? Yeah, sure. But yeah, I have him at number 8, probably a tier below this. But get lots of solos. He's going to get a lot of them, but I'm just afraid, like I said, that David soaks up enough of them. I don't have him this high.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Brett?
I'm a big fan. I think he can continue to develop. Obviously they've got Barrett, who's going to be rushing the passer and getting a ton of sacks potentially. David's going to be kind of going over the middle with him. I mean, their defense is kind of kept intact for the most part from last year, so I would think he's probably going to have a very similar ceiling to what he had last year. I mean, obviously the game's going to slow down a little bit for him, and he's going to get a little bit smarter just after a year of growth and maturity. But so I would expect him to grow some, but there's still going to be that cap because they've just got such a talented linebacking group. But I would still have him in the top 10 somewhere. I don't necessarily know. I mean, like we talked about, when you're in the top 10, I mean, these guys are all starters. They're all guys that you can play on a weekly basis and trust that they'll produce. So having them up here at the 4 spot is fine. What say you on your number 4, Paul? Who do you got there?
Littleton, who we already hit on. My number 5 then is Bush. Already somewhat hit on him. It was which Devin are you interested in?
Mm-hmm.
Before the draft, I had him said I wasn't super high on White, and I wasn't super high on Bush either. But when he landed in a spot where he's got a solid front, is it a 3 or a 4? I know they mix it up seemingly every snap, but the line that's in front of him, it's good. It's also not fantasy good. I mean, I know Watt is good, but there's just so many solos up the middle of the field for him, and I know they blitz him, and they also use him in coverage. So just his chances for points are super high. I guess the one thing that I'm not a fan of is they have something like 7 or 8 guys that you look at on defense. Go, all right, here's a quality player. There's a quality player. There's a Pro Bowler. There's an All-Pro. Like, you just look at that and go, all right, well, I know he's going to do well. That's the one thing I look at him and go, okay, that's I don't like, but I have the other Devin at number 5.
Yeah, I mean, I love Pittsburgh's front 7. They tend to produce quality fantasy guys. Their secondary tends to be a little more suspect. I think this is recently, but we'll see how that pans out. Bush is solid. I mean, I loved him at Michigan. Obviously, as a Michigan slappy, I've got a little bit of bias because I watch all their games, and I thought he was the heart and soul of that defense. And you can tell this year the defense just wasn't the same losing him. But that's going to continue to develop and has a ton of potential, especially in fantasy circles. Bush is a guy that I think you can still acquire him because it seems like people are kind of hot and cold on him. in some of the leagues that I'm in where I talk trade about linebacker, he's one of those that you find a league people either love him or they just are like whatever. I mean, he was a highly drafted guy, but they're just not sold on him. Kraig, what do you think about Devin Bush?
I had him right outside my top 10. I like him. Again, I just didn't like him as much as Devin White. I guess, from what I saw, the two of them going into it, and to me last year reinforced it, was that what Paul went into. White was faster and a little bit more athletic, where he could get out there and make some of those plays besides the tackles. Yeah, White probably missed more tackles if you go look at it. But when I'm looking for that high upside, and then with what he showed last year to me in the 13 games that he played, I just feel that White has that higher upside, and that's why I had him higher than Bush. But I have no problem with him having them in the top 10 either. I can understand why he's there for him.
For sure. Who's your 5 if it's not Devin Bush?
Jalen Smith, who you had at 2.
I love him. Love him.
Brad,
Okay. What's up, Paul?
Brad, I got a trivia question for you. When Bush was in high school, do you know what the other school he considered was? And do you know what school his father went to?
I do. Off the top of my head, no, but I'm sure it's something I'm not going to like. I do remember it though. Gosh, what is it?
Oh, that's right. No one can. Oh, that's right. No one can see this besides the three of us in the chat.
I don't see anything, Brad. Do you?
Thanks. Yes, sir. Thanks, Kraig. Oh, his dad was on the '93 national champions.
Oh yeah.
And everyone thought that he would end up there, and then he was going to hit up Michigan. And I'm like, that one hurt. Even in high school, I knew that he was an NFL.
Well, yeah, and his dad was a good player too. I mean, it's definitely that's a good family.
Yeah, I think he was a first-round safety for the Falcons. But yeah, he was one of the few that I looked at even and went, all right, maybe he doesn't go in the first round, which ended up happening. But this is one of those special players who was an NFLer, even at that age.
Well, and and the concern for some folks was always the size, but the guy, not only does he have an impeccable work ethic and a high motor, but the dude brings it every play. I mean, that's first round talent. I don't care what size he is. The guy doesn't get hurt a lot, and when he did get banged up, he was playing through it. I mean, he's a stud. I mean, the dude's just super talented, and fantasy relevant. Probably easily the next 10 years. Probably could potentially be even more if he takes care of himself.
Yep, I agree.
Okay,
so who's the next one?
Well, I'm gonna throw my number because I know Rick sitting over the chat will probably be excited because it's a boy from his team. I love Roquan Smith. I know he didn't have the greatest 2019. And he kind of was up and down. But I think that the talent is there. I liked him in college. I thought he played well in college, and it transitioned well to the NFL, and I think he fits really, really nicely. And I think he's still got a lot of room to improve. I mean, so even potentially could get higher than number 5 for me. But I'm a big Roquan Smith fan. Kraig, what do you think about him?
I like him too. I don't have him that high, but I do still have him in my top. I think he was number 11 for me. He had a good rookie year, and everyone got really. Certainly, I can understand that with where I had Devin White up there after a year. Part of it may be when you're looking at this, like you said, he got hurt, which can be part of it. I guess, and maybe this is unfair to him. Part of me is think we've discussed with some of these other guys. You look at the defensive lines in front of them, the others around them. To me, it almost feels like I want, because he has some of those other guys, to take away the pressure from him. They have a good defensive line. They've had a good one there in Chicago. And again, maybe it's those guys taking away stats from him then. But I just had him slightly lower. But he's another cornerstone player that if you get him at a good spot in a draft, you're going to be happy, I think, with what you get out of him for the next 8 to 10 years potentially.
Absolutely. Paul, what do you think about Roquan?
I don't have him in my top 10, and I don't think, and I could have probably slotted another 5 to 10 guys ahead of him. When he was coming out and he went 8th overall, my first thought was, okay, I completely get it. He's really fast. He's really smart. I think highly enough of Trevathan that he's going to soak up enough of them that I don't, like Kraig said with Bush. I think there's some of the other options there that's so enough of them that I'm just not that much of a fan. And I know this is hearsay a little bit, but I still think he was behind the drunk driving accident when he got suspended for a game or so last year. And if he's not committed all in on this, talent's not going to save him. And I know that he was never charged or whatever, but how many high-class Ferraris are just crashing at 2 a.m.? And we know that he had one of those. I just don't have him that high.
So your concerns are more character and longevity.
I can certainly see it. I mean, he gets a lot of tackles, but yeah, I just don't know if he's as long for the NFL. If he stays in the NFL, he'll be someone that gets the money and field, and he'll be fine. I just think he's Josh Gordon, and I'm not saying you shouldn't smoke weed, don't do that. I think the NFL's a bunch of idiots, but if you can't follow what they expect, all right, sorry, dude.
Yep. So what, Kraig, who do you got at 6?
Number 6, I have a new linebacker for Jacksonville, Joe Schobert. I thought he performed really well. We talked about him actually in the free agency episode, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to see what else they do there. I mentioned on that one that, Miles Jack, I'm not the biggest fan of him. He has all the talent in the world, but from what I can tell, he just isn't putting it together on the field. And it feels like to me Jacksonville's saying the same thing when they went out and got him. I think he's in a great position to put up statistics. He's done it before. He's a young player on a defense that needs playmakers and has plenty of tackle opportunities. So I had him as my number 6. And that was before and after. He didn't really move once he went to Jacksonville for me.
Yeah, I think putting him in Jacksonville, that gives him a lot of opportunity. That's a talented linebacking group with Miles Jack moving to the outside, and they've still got, Leon Jacobs, and I think it's like Quincy Williams. I mean, they've got a talented young linebacking group. Paul, what do you think about Schobert?
I think if we added another 5, he would have been at the top end of that. I don't have him in my top 10, but I can certainly see it. I think he got helped by Jacksonville. Browns decided every week that hey, we're going to give snaps to this guy, then this guy, then this guy, and Schobert's sitting there like, all right, what the heck? I do everything, and I'm not on the field. And I will give Elliott this. He saw this 100% before I did, scooped him up in every league in front of Kraig and I, and he looked really smart for it. I don't see downside because I don't think Jack is really good. he's just an athlete that everyone sees. Oh well, he should have went in the first and didn't. He's just not good. I can certainly see Schobert ending the year at 3rd to 5th overall, and I don't think anyone would really be like, oh well, that shouldn't have happened. I mean, he gets a lot of forced fumbles, and that's should be high scoring in your league. And he's basically the Charles Tillman. He forces a lot of fumbles. He picks a lot of them up. I don't know how he does it, but it happens. I think you said you had him 6. I could certainly see that.
For sure. So I had Edmonds here at 6. Who's your 6, Paul?
Smith.
Okay. So then why don't you get us started at number 7? Who's your 7?
I like Youth a lot. In every poll, I'm going to be the guy who ends up with the draft selection, and I pick that side every time. I felt I should be at least somewhat honest, and I put Wagner at number 7. Just knowing, you know what you're going to get for the next 3 to 4 years, and it's just elite. I really much to say about it because he does have. Let's see here. He was in the 2012 year because I drafted him in a lot of leagues in the first year and just sat on him. So he has 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. He's got 8 years. I know he got hurt one of them, but whenever he's on the field, he's a top 5 option at the position. If you're someone who can win in the next 3 years, I'd be like me and you trade him away for a guy who gets hurt one game into it, and Craig's going to laugh and smile at that.
So, Kraig, what's your take on Wagner?
I had him right about the same spot as Paul, and we sort of have a lot of the same thoughts in terms of I value youth a lot too because we are looking at Dynasty, and that top 10 for me is really the elite guys and some of those younger guys that I think have shown it I'm going to want over him just based on what I would perceive to be how many years they have left. But I had Bobby Wagner at 9, and you can't, say enough about how well he performs. He's a tackling machine. He's always around the ball. Now that especially those 2 safeties are gone, he's the heart of that Seattle defense. And they've put some time and effort into getting a defensive line to help with that. And, like Paul said, other than that 1 year, I think it was 2014, he only had like 11 games or something, but he still had over 100 combined tackles that year. And if you just want a guy that you can plug and play and not worry about, he would be it.
Yeah, he's definitely a top 10 player, and he will be, for the foreseeable future. I mean, easily probably 3 to 4, or even 5 years, depending on how he takes care of himself. Yeah. Who's your 7, Kraig?
He's a guy that I got in a few leagues when he came out, and I got him not that early in all of them. And I think he took a lot of people by surprise that weren't too plugged into the IDP world. But I had Fred Warner out of San Francisco, guy there. He came on as a rookie and he put up numbers, and there was a lot of concerns last year. I believe with Quan coming out, he would be able to continue that. And he basically tackles for the year, but he's starting to egg plays. He had more sacks, tackles for a loss, forced fumble option. He, turned himself into a guy, even with that linebacker in there, as someone that can put up the stats as, a top 5, top 10 guy.
Yeah, I mean, and having that, that defensive front in front of him, I mean, that gives you a lot of room for success because those guys are fantastic. Yep. Paul, what do you think about Warner?
Can they please trade?
Not
only for my shares. I was going to say not only for my shares, but it would help everyone's shares just to get him out of there. it just seems like a Jacksonville or Miami, like hey, we need someone to overpay and like. But yeah, I don't have him in my top 10, but he would probably be in the next 5 to 7 after it. I would have liked to have seen the draft capital on him, but when he was on the field, yeah, he was every bit of not necessarily some of the ones we discussed, but right in that next little tier. Yeah, he was right there. They used him all over the field, and the fact that Greenlaw's good in coverage means that they're that they'll be getting, and you should get more sackles. Did I say sackles? Huh. Okay, it's been a long day.
Making up new words.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna make a new word there and say sackle. Yeah, he might get a few more of those. Yeah, I'm not as high on him, but I don't know. What's your thoughts, Brad?
Yeah, I mean he's definitely I think he's kind of on the cusp of being startable every week. I would be more comfortable saying he's definitely weekly startable if they moved on from Alexander, but we know Alexander's just going to get hurt, so that's probably inevitable that he's Warner's startable without too much concern. And he's super young. I mean, I like to value young guys in Dynasty. I like to value young guys that are productive and good for more. So Warner's one of those. We know at 8, Paul has Devin White. Littleton is who I have. Kraig, who's your number 8 linebacker?
My number 8 is, again, sort of falls close to the Bobby Wagner category that we had talked about, but I had Deion Jones of Atlanta in there. To see what they put around him here, but, with what they're paying him and what he's produced, I know he had an injury issue there 2 years ago. But he came back from that and he had a nice season working his way back. He still had over 100 combined tackles. And as the guy in that center spot for the Falcons, I like him a lot. And not as much as I had prior to his injury, but bias, and I try to be cognizant of that. But I think he's going to be right back where he was as, top 5, top 10 linebacker for most leagues this coming year.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern with that is Atlanta's front. I like to look at linebackers who have a solid front four in front of them, and I have some concerns with Atlanta. The nice thing is that Jones is athletic enough to overcome some of the deficiencies along Atlanta's front four. Paul, what do you think about Deion Jones? Not only this year but in the future.
You said that you were concerned about what's in front of them. I guess when did they ever have something good in front of them? They basically never. And the only guy who's decent enough to get tackles beside him now plays for the Cardinals. They don't have anything up the middle. Their safeties are crap. Corners are garbage. He's the only one who can soak up any tackles that they have, and quite frankly, good enough on offense where you say, all right, well, the defense is not going to see the field much. No, I see them going 6-10, maybe 7-9. He's going to be on the field, so he's going to get all the stats. I had him number 9, and I looked it up. He's only 25. I thought he was 27 or 28. No, he just came in the league at 21 or something like that. Like, he could be someone that we look at this and go, all right, he's number 3 or 4 this time next year. He's just an elite athlete.
I mean, for what it's worth,
Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Go ahead. I mean, they don't have the sort of elite defensive line that we talked about, but I don't think it's anything that's completely trash either. I mean, Grady Jarrett's a good defensive tackle. Fowler is, at least, when they're rushing, is going to get a little bit of respect, and they're going to have to pay attention to him. So, what are they going to get out of him year to year? I don't know, but Grady Jarrett's nothing to sniff at as far as a defensive tackle, having him there in the middle. So, I mean, it's not Deion Jones and nothing on the defense anyway.
Well, and I like the what's the kid's name? Isn't it like Comiskey or something? I thought he had a decent amount of talent coming out of college and could develop. I mean, they need something to
McKinley?
happen. Well, I thought his name wasn't it like John Comiskey? No, I don't like I don't like Tack McKinley at all. But let me pull up their depth chart. I thought the kid's name was Comiskey. I believe he's a guy off the edge. Let's see here.
Yeah, look here.
I'm pulling it up right now.
They picked up Fowler, but he's obviously an end.
Yeah, Comiskey. They drafted him in the middle of the last year. He was out of what was he out of? Was he at Boston College?
I'm seeing the other guy is Foyesade Oluoka.
Oh yeah, a linebacker. Yeah, I was thinking of defensive lineman. I think their defensive line has a couple of guys. I mean, Grady Jarrett's obviously their best player, but they drafted a kid to play the edge. His name was John Comiskey. Okay. They drafted him in 2019 in the 4th round, and I thought he might be okay. Obviously not terribly fantasy relevant, but just a good football player. To help them out. But they did also. I forgot they did sign Tyler Davidson from that. He's probably more of a stopgap than anything, so I think he's 27 or 28. But I mean, it ultimately comes back to Deion Jones is going to get a ton of action because he's going to have to make a lot of plays.
Kind of makes up for drafting Senate in the 3rd round. He was at best the 7th. He's another one I've been watching since he was in high school.
Yeah, I wasn't terribly huge fan.
They don't have anything on that defense outside of hoping Neal just gets healthy, and I think that's far from a given now, because if he's healthy and he's 100%, he's a top 3-4 safety.
Oh yeah.
Maybe not 3 or 4. Let's go 5 or 6. But even so, he's an elite option. If he's not out there, who else is getting the tackles?
Yeah, I mean, what wasn't like Kazee basically their best secondary player after Neal went down, and he's nothing terribly exciting.
Yeah, he's by no means good. I mean, that, and they just outright cut Trufant because he didn't play zone well, which you knew that when you drafted him. I remember, I guess, was it the Saints that they just beat the snot out of week 11 or something last year? Everyone goes, how did this happen? Well, they didn't play cover 3. Like, if we play what they have for what they're good at, they're not as horrible. But when they force this cover system on them, everyone looked like an idiot, Jones included. If they can simply say, hey, you get him, Jones, you get the middle of the field, this is what we're looking for right here. Well, they sucked last year. He got hurt, yada, yada, yada. I would run him at number 9 than all these other options in front of him. Price.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I mean, that's part of what, when you were looking at an actual fantasy draft or something, you got to factor draft capital into it. Every one of these we probably talk about, know your scoring, know your starters and all that. But draft capital does matter. When you're going to be looking at like the rookies you guys discussed last week, it's going to matter a big difference, especially in a draft like this, where some of these guys might normally go towards the end of the 2nd round in your, call it average IDP draft for rookies. You might be able to get one of them in the 4th round or something just because of the depth and the talent this offensive draft has. So You always have to look at what you have to invest to get someone somewhere. And the same thing with trading. If you can find someone who's down on one of these guys because they didn't perform as well last year, like, Roquan Smith, for example, that you really believe in, go for it by all means. You want to pay that third or late second or something because you think he's going to produce linebacker one numbers. It's not a bad deal if you can find it. It's just finding that guy that you believe in that someone else is low on. For a lot of these guys, it's difficult.
Oh, for sure. So over on. Oh yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I was gonna say, let's make Anthony and Rick just a little bit uncomfortable. When I say I would rather have Jones and like a late first over Leonard, and I know that they're thinking, what, there's IDPs that are worth that much? Yes, there are. But yeah, I would rather have Jones in like a late first or early second over all the rest of these options in front of them. Just because I can get it, and, well, not Argot, because no one cares about defense in that league besides you, but like, I would rather have him in the extra capital, if we're saying it like that.
Yeah, and Leonard's one of those guys people are going to have to overpay if they want him at this point.
Yeah, he's expensive, more expensive, and super expensive. There's just no other option.
And Rick's response to you, Paul, was quit talking.
Yeah. That's why he's not on the show. He doesn't know defense.
He does have a question, though. So he wants to know thoughts on Sione Takitaki and Uchenna Nwosu. Kraig, what do you think about those two?
Either of them in my top 10. So I'm not sure they exactly qualify for tonight, Rick. But if you'd like to submit a question on our Discord or through the Facebook group, please feel free to go to those or visit rotoheat.com to look at all of our complete rankings.
Gotta love the sales pitch.
That was super shameless there. Yeah, I was never a fan of Taki, and I'm sorry, who was the other guy he said?
Uchenna Nwosu, he's over in LA with the Chargers.
Oh yeah, I looked at that 2018 USC, and I didn't see an NFL player on it. I mean, someone that you would actually want to play. And I know everyone was high on him, and who was the white middle linebacker? I mean, this guy was it Smith? Cameron Smith? Like, I just didn't see it in either one of them. And I know Nwosu at least looked decent this last year, but he was more a fifth or sixth rounder, and I think he went in the mid-third.
Well, I think the tough thing for both of these guys is Taki was drafted under now Cleveland's previous regime. So is Stefanski going to put out a system that really gives him value long term? I don't know. I mean, that's going to be the question. I at this point, he's probably a guy that's on waivers. So if you want to stash him and see what happens, because Cleveland kind of drafted him higher for some reason that I don't know why. I like Mac Wilson there if you want a young Cleveland Brown linebacker. Nwosu, I think in with the Chargers, they always seem to have some value at linebackers, but they also have 100 linebackers that are hurt every year. So it's like, whichever one's the healthy one will probably give you some value because that front of the Chargers is always pretty good. So, Kraig,
if you believe in either one of them, like you said, they should be cheap. And if you have a taxi squad or something like that, you should be able to stash to see if they pan out. They both are going to have that opportunity. It's just a matter of, especially with the draft coming up in about 2 weeks, are they going to bring in competition? I would think they're going to have to, and I wouldn't be surprised to see either one of them take someone early. Now, are you going to get anyone better in the draft? You guys had kind of discussed it last week, kind of going over the rookies. There's maybe 4 or 5 that you kind of like for the top linebackers, but beyond that, maybe you're not going to get anyone that's better on the field. So, they're going to have an opportunity to show what they can do. I am kind of like Paul. I haven't seen a whole lot out of hockey that I like. For the Chargers, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Like you said, with the injuries that they seem to have every year and the number of linebackers that they use because of that, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Charger linebackers anymore. The best linebacker owned for them is Derwin James, but he's over in safety. So,
what do you think the odds are that they pick the most obscure names they could find, thinking that we didn't have an answer and we had one?
Well, I'm about to say there are plenty of other obscure names that they could throw at us.
don't tempt them, Paul.
I'm just saying, I don't think the odds on that are nil. I think that they looked like, he doesn't know this name. Yeah, we do.
Dude, for our rookie stuff, I had to learn Albert Okui-Bunum, so I'm pretty confident I could figure out these two guys' names. Yeah, I guess Rick's saying they're on his taxi squad. I mean, and that's a tough thing with the taxi squad. I tend to not keep a guy more than a year or two. If I don't see them developing, I just boot them and just keep churning that taxi squad. So, if you've got better options out there, I mean, both of them will probably stay on the free agent market even after you drop them from your taxi squad, unless they have a big week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, defense, it's all about seeing the field, and if you don't see the field, it's not like offense where you can go, all right, he didn't learn the scheme, yada, yada, yada. Defense is more, there's enough untalented options that see the field that actually score, that if you don't see the field in the first year and a half, yep, sorry, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's the wire.
So at 9, I know Paul had Deion Jones already at 9. My number 9 is a guy that I'm hoping I'm not regretting leaving him here, but I liked him pre-injury enough that I think that I'm leaving him here for now, and that's Leighton Vander Esch. Kraig, how do you feel? Do you think he'll bounce back and be as productive? How do you feel about his dynasty value overall?
I think he's someone that if you believe in, we can kind of discuss guys that you might be able to get cheaper than some of these other top guys we talked about. He's probably on that list because of the injury history and the injuries that he's had in the NFL now. That was the big red flag for him, and I was honestly a bit confused as to why Dallas took him when they did. Remains to be seen about this year, but Paul and I always get together with some guys for the draft, and they probably saw my reaction of kind of being, he was a guy that I think NFL teams clearly like more than I did, and they know a lot more than I do. Showing he can be productive, but, for the man's own health, I have concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just something that you see a lot of guys aren't messing with. There was a guy a few years ago that I had gotten off of waivers, Chris Borland. He just had a monster year for San Francisco for a year or two, and then he decided, you know what, I have other options. This isn't worth my health long term, and he hung it up. And if you're talking dynasty wise, guys with these sort of injuries, you got to consider, do I want to pick someone who might not be here in 2 years based on what we already know?
Sure.
So that's my big concern for him, for himself, fantasy wise, and then as a fan of the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'll get 100% behind that. I don't have him in my top 20 because of that. If you just too much risk that 6 months hangs him up and goes, yeah, sorry, buddy. Thought he was more a 3rd or 4th rounder, and I learned a new term when they selected him. It was SARF, scheme adjusted round fit. And basically what that means is on the offensive side, because most people like offense, if you're Denver, say, for instance, and a lot of the reasons people want Ruggs is because they already have Sutton. You don't need another Sutton. You want something else. And they already had Smith, who's good at coverage, so they wanted someone who they could basically run up the middle and, unfortunately, jam his neck basically every snap and just go chase him. And if he lasts in the league, great. If not, okay, well. But if he's on the field, he's really good at one thing. You ask him to cover, it doesn't show. This is way too high for me. But if he can stay healthy, it'll completely pay off, and we'll both look like fools.
Well, I've admitted plenty of times in my career that I make bad decisions, and sometimes it's because I fall in love with a guy's talent, and this could be one of those times. If Ash is on the field, he's valuable. Can he stay on the field? Maybe Rick's rubbing off on me too much. I'm not worrying about injury with linebacker, but we'll see. Kraig, who's your number 9?
Number 9 for me is Blake Martinez, new star linebacker for the New York Giants. We had kind of discussed him in the free agency episode, but I really like what he was able to do. And I know Paul had some concerns about real life. For me, if we're talking fantasy-wise here, he's going to put up stats. He's going to eat behind the Giants line, and there really is not a whole lot else for him in terms of competition. The past 4 years in Green Bay, he's put up more than 90 solo tackles. He's had over, 13 tackles for a loss / sacks, which is great for a guy like that to be able to get those along with the tackle points. I just love the production that he's going to give you week in and week out.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants have quickly become a very stout front. Ian Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence, those are some big boys. And, I think Martinez, just looking at their depth chart with Martinez, they ain't got much else. Lorenzo Carter, David Mayo, and Kyler Fackrell. You have to assume during the draft they're going to address linebacker at some point, even though they've got other holes they could be trying to fill. But either way, that still leads, Martinez to probably be the leader of that linebacking group and, easily a startable weekly asset at linebacker. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah. What's the reason we like Ledmans, Littleton, and I'll say Simmons ends up with Washington for just sake of argument. These are all below average. I know the Bills aren't, but these are all below average teams where they don't have anything else at the position. Martinez isn't the athlete are, but he can at least make the tackle. I know when they played San Francisco in the playoffs, he looked like crap, but he's going to soak up a lot of solos. And Lawrence and Tomlinson, who I don't know why they didn't draft a 290-pounder between those guys, but no, let's just put two guys that are 330 next to each other and hope it works. It won't, but it'll help Martinez with a lot of solos. I do not think that they draft another one in the top 3. They need edge help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they need a lot of other positions. But it wouldn't shock me. But I don't have him in my top 10, but he wouldn't be far below it either.
Okay, so
what about you, Brad?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Blake Martinez. I think when everything's said and done, he could easily talk his way into, or I should say, being a top 10 linebacker. I don't have him in the top 10, but when you're looking at the startable kind of LB1s that are in fantasy right now, there's kind of a glut of good options. Like so for me, I have injury-riddled guys or guys with question marks in my top 10, but that doesn't mean that there aren't, 10 other guys that have plenty of opportunity to get into the top, 10 at the end, even by the time the season starts. Because typically I review my rankings on a regular basis. I have no doubt that these guys will probably shift around a little bit. Some of the younger guys probably won't move much for me, but Martinez could easily work his way into it. For the Giants, I just have concerns about the team overall, kind of the direction and the way they're building it. I just don't know if if Martinez is the only guy, he's probably going to eat like crazy because he's going to have to do all the work, which is good. If they add a couple of other pieces, kind of day 2, day 3 that I really like, that could change things for me. So for me, it's kind of a wait and see, which is why I didn't bump him up into the top 10. But after he signed with the Giants, I bumped him way up just on that alone. I mean, Green Bay, I liked him there, but there was just so many other options there that I was like, I can't love him. That being said, I think he's got a great future with the Giants. Paul, why don't you kick us off with? Oh, go ahead.
Which you're actually hitting on one of the main differences between offense and defense. On offense, to be really, really, really good, you typically get talent. Mm-hmm. On defense, and anyone who makes the NFL is talented, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
Blake Martinez is probably a C+ athlete. We're talking about him as an A- asset just because of landing spot. You get this on the offensive side, you're not going to have these guys higher than like 20th, 25th in the preseason ranks. Like, all right, like he should be good, but he's all they have. You start having this on defense, we're talking about this guy, 8th, 9th, 10th, and no one here is really saying, well, no, it shouldn't be like that. But that's just one of the main differences that I think really frustrates a lot of the people who don't really play this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I love about the defensive side of it is, if you get in a pinch, there are plenty of ways to fix your core of guys. If you don't have that stud top end linebacker, well, you just continue to rotate in guys that are hot. I mean, there's a lot of ways to play the positions from the defensive side that's the offensive side. On the offensive side, you want to get those quality guys, and they're hard to get, hard to pry away from people. Where on defense, you can still be respectable even if you don't have the elite players.
Yes. The athletes.
Right.
We should say.
Yeah, athlete's probably a better word.
You don't. Yeah.
All right. So go ahead, Paul.
But you were asking who I had at the end then.
Yeah. Who's your number 10?
Shaq Thompson.
From Carolina. Yeah.
I think Kuechly not being there means he's going to get all the tackles. I know their defensive line isn't off, but there's at least pieces there. I'm a Bridgewater fan. Obviously, CMC is awesome. Moore is good, but I still think they finish with between 6 and 8 wins, and that means that he's probably going to see the field a lot, and they don't have a lot around him either. I know I picked him up cheap off of Geis in the LOG League, and he threw him in like nothing, and I'm like, okay, this is a top 10 at the position, especially with Kuechly. I'm looking at their chart now. I mean, to hear Whitehead is, but they don't have safeties that are worth anything. The rest of the defense, I mean, the rest of the realistic back 7, they don't have anything. And what was he, number 4 or 5 last year? And we know he's a supreme athlete. They drafted him, at the end of the first that one year. So you have the athlete. Where did he finish last year? 22nd. But didn't he get hurt for a couple games last year?
I don't think he played the full season.
Yeah, he got hurt for a couple games, and I just think that known floor along with of not having Kuechly, this is where I have him.
What about you, Kraig? How do you feel about Thompson?
What's your thoughts, guys?
I'm probably got some bias against him. I feel bitter because he's a guy that I've owned seemingly every year up until last year in various leagues, where I was hoping with that draft capital and, what else they had besides Kuechly wasn't a whole lot. This is going to be the year. I mean, he was always the guy that was going to take over Thomas Davis's position until, well, Davis and Kuechly are gone now. So he's going to have to get the starts at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Paul said, I don't have a problem with him there. He completely put it together, like he said last year, played in 14 games, over 100 combined tackles. He's all over the field. I like him a lot. I don't have him as high, and discussed it in part, not a whole lot in front of him. This might be one of the weaker defensive lines that we've talked about when you look at it as a whole in front of the guys that we've talked. So I have him in my top 20, probably closer to 15, but I don't have a problem seeing them at 10, in that sort of second tier that we've discussed.
Yeah, and you've been hearing it pre-draft that the Panthers, I mean, everybody's been mocking them with some sort of defensive lineman. So it doesn't surprise me that when we look at them on paper right now, they look just like a dumpster fire because their defensive line just looks really bad. But that's good for Thompson, because that means this year, the way they've signed free agents, bringing in a vet like Whitehead and and doing some of those things, I don't think they're going to address the position a lot in the draft, or at least early enough where you think it's going to matter to Thompson's value. So I think you're safe there having him as an LB1, even if it's a back end LB1. He should have more than enough value to give you weekly top 10 to 15 numbers. Who's your 10, Kraig?
We've already covered all of my top 10. I don't know if I transposed Wagner and Martinez, but those are my 9 and 10 who we had gone over.
Well, seems I bring the
you had.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Was there anyone that you had that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, so I was
not my top 10, no.
Oh, not in your top 10. Well, I've got my number 10, and you guys can laugh, can cry, whatever you feel like doing. I loved him coming out of college. He was a high draft pick. I hope he bounces back from injury, but Bradley Chubb from the Broncos, I loved him across from Von Miller. I thought either one of them could really, kind of dominate off the edge and really cause issues for offensive coordinators trying to figure out who to double team coming off the edge. So far, he hasn't. The tough thing is I put him here, but he hasn't really exploded. I mean, he's shown signs of it, and then last year he got hurt. And so this could be him and Van Der Esch are two guys. As I was looking over my top 10 pre-show, I was like, I may regret doing this, but I'm just going to leave it because I don't, I didn't want to mess around with my numbers too much. But what do you think about Bradley Chubb, Paul?
One of the reasons I put Simmons at number 3 was if he gets dual eligible, he could really skyrocket. I don't know why more sites don't have Chubb defensive end backer eligible. As a backer, I don't have him this high, but that's also because I'm assuming that there's other guys that are in the middle who are going to eclipse him. I don't have a problem with it. I thought he should have went. Let's see here, that draft went.
Wasn't he like number 4 or 5
Mayfield,
or something?
Yeah, he went 5.
Yeah, he went 5, and I thought that Cleveland was just a bunch of idiots for taking Ford in front of him. I can completely see this. Even on Thompson, I'm kind of explaining why. But I think you have the top 9 and then like everybody else. I think he's in that next tier. I'm not this high on him, but if you play sack heavy leagues,
yeah,
I can complete. I thought he should have went. Was Saquon in that? Yeah, okay. So the top 3 picks, 2 being quarterbacks. I thought he was the best non-obvious option in that draft. So Completely, I can get behind it, but it depends on your scoring format. If it's tackle heavy, then not so much. If it's sack heavy, yeah, sure, 100%.
What about you, Kraig?
I like him as a young linebacker in the NFL. And again, echoing what Paul said, scoring wise, most of the leagues that I'm in, I don't know if any of them were actually considered big play leagues where those, sacks, a guy getting 12 sacks a year with another 12 tackles for a loss are going to eclipse the guys getting 100 tackles a year. We try to balance it out. And again, there's no perfect scoring system or way to do that unless you're going to get down to outside linebacker versus inside linebacker and different scoring for the different positions. But, he's a great young linebacker. And if you're getting a lot of points for big plays, there's no reason that he can't be up there. Again, like you mentioned, though, is he going to come back? Is it going to take him another year or beyond 2020 to be able to come back to where he was to be seen? But as far as talent and then position wise, I like him a lot.
Yeah, for sure. That is our top 10. Are there, as we close out the show, you guys in the chats, thanks for hanging out with us. If you have questions, make sure you put them up. Are thoughts that you guys have? I'll start with you, Paul. Is there anything we need to think about as we talk about these top 10 linebackers? What would you pay to get a top 10 linebacker? Kind of what do you value them at? I'll start with you, Paul.
Obviously, it depends on scoring. Craig and I we did have a league that you could get a top 5 guy just like for free because of who was in the league and scoring format. But then we also have other leagues where, like XFL, some of these options, you're busting out firsts and seconds. I really think you have a line after about White and maybe Jones. I would want to have one of those options versus what I think that's the line in the sand. And I even said Thompson, but he's not what those other options. I would want as many of those options as you can get your hands on, unless the price is just too high or in your league it's an option with if it's huge IDP scoring, then these guys just aren't an option just because of age and scoring. But if you play sort of a mixed, I'll take any 2 of these and a third option just off the scrap heap, and I would feel fine about it. What's your thoughts, Craig?
Most leagues I'm in now are deeper benches than what I'm used to. So, a lot of guys that you maybe want to get thrown in are already going to be wrong. So if you're looking for a top option, you're probably going to have to be paying a back end for an early second to acquire one of these guys. And if you can find them cheaper than that, by all means, go out there and get them. I've talked to a lot of people over the years about, offensive versus defensive trades, and I find those trickier to pull off. Trading a wide receiver 2 for, Darius Leonard or something. How do you balance that? Those valuations are a lot harder when you're including defense to me. So I don't do a whole lot of those myself, but just in terms of pure picks, if you're trying to get a Darius Leonard in a deep league and it's a big league, you're probably paying more than a first just because of the points that he's going to be putting up for you. And do you want to invest that in a linebacker versus, who you're going to get at the end of the first round at most of the drafts this year, which again looks deeper than a lot of other years? I personally wouldn't, but I've also had a lot of success finding guys in the later rounds or, picking them up for 4 or 5 weeks at the end of the year when someone else gets hurt, doing a plug and play. So I personally prefer it that route. If I can't get a guy that I like in the draft spot, I feel comfortable, I generally stay away from large IDP trades, but that's probably what you're going to have to fork over a high pick to get someone.
Yeah, agreed, especially in deeper leagues. Well, awesome.
Can I say one thing on that?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
To piggy off that, Leonard, and this is one of the reasons that I don't do large IDPs either. Leonard, you could have had in the 4th or 5th round. Littleton was free for the first 18 months after his draft year. Smith, you could have had for nothing, but that was injury.
Mm-hmm.
Deion Jones went in the 4th of our main league, and Shaq Thompson, despite being in the 1st, you could have had for nothing. Schobert, you could have had for nothing. Martinez, you could have had. Like, this is one of the reasons I'm saying, hey, get one of these top options, and then behind it, just have the shotgun. All right, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and hopefully one of them works out, which is what Craig's saying. Don't necessarily overpay, but if someone wants it, yeah, they're justified in asking a first.
For sure.
I mean, I know that a lot to say, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Oh, for sure.
Sorry to add that on there, but
no,
you have to look at what cost was, like the same as the offense. Like, how many of these guys were someone that you drafted high and they stayed high versus how many of them just Littleton, undrafted free agent. Leonard, a week before the draft, the guy was a 5th or 6th rounder. Like, there is more out of left field on defense than on offense.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
So I just wanted to throw that in.
No, that's good. I mean, it's good clarification. So it's important things to think about, especially when you're in some of these deeper leagues, and those of you that are doing IDP, you probably have considerable deep leagues because there's a lot that goes into these type of roster building. So it's important to think about those things. I mean, that's why guys like, I'll throw out a Leonard teammate like a Bobby Okirke. That's a guy that you could get or could have gotten for fairly cheap and stashed him to see if he can develop. And you take shots on some of these linebackers that had a profile that probably weren't like highly drafted, because the highly drafted guys tend to get picked up early. And you see if they develop. No harm, no foul. But if they do develop, then you've hit lightning in a bottle, and that's a big deal. So I don't see any other questions. So we're gonna wrap it up. It's 11 o'clock. We've had a good conversation about kind of the 10-ish linebackers in IDP Dynasty. Obviously we all had a little bit different. For those of you that either just tuned in or maybe didn't catch it all, I'll wind up putting an article. I'll get our consensus, top 10 together, and put an article together with a click with a so that folks can check it out after the fact. And Paul, Kraig, as always, it's great having you guys on and chit chatting, and it's always fun to kind of banter back and forth and see what we're all thinking. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Don't forget, if you are watching this, Kraig's Twitter handle, my Twitter handle, Paul is available in our awesome Facebook and Discord communities, which have been scrolling across the bottom of the screen, so you can check them out there. If you did like this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit Kraig and I and Paul up over on Facebook or Discord or Twitter, and we love to talk about IDP and help you grow in IDP knowledge and help IDP grow in the community, because IDP is a fun way to make fantasy even more relevant and even deeper and even more interesting. So thank you guys, and we will talk to you again next Monday. We will talk about, we'll hit defensive line next week. We'll talk about kind of our top 10 defensive line